Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. In this one I want to talk about this Buzzfeed article that I just found. It's obviously a Zutara article here, and I don't really talk about shipping on the channel that much for sort of obvious reasons, because a lot of the times I think these discussions just don't go anywhere, and it's just people getting sort of angry at each other for no real reason. As I say every time I pretty much discuss this, there is a difference between talking about canon ships and the scenes in the shows that are very clearly romantic, and then non-canon ships where it is just fans who think X character and Y character would be good in a relationship and is very speculative. The problem that often happens with Zutara though, and is something that happens in this article, is that in an effort to promote why Zutara should be the relationship, it ends up being a little bit of a let's bring down Katara and Aang's relationship to big up our one. Yet it's incorporating both sides of the discussion. It is at the same time the overreaching, sort of speculative discussion of these two characters should be in a relationship because of these symbolic points, even though no scenes in the show directly are like actually romance focused scenes. Yet the scenes that are negative towards Katara and Aang are scenes directly relating to their romance. And it's this very kind of confused thing of like, what are you trying to accomplish here? And ultimately with this article, it's just to get the shipping discussion going again. It's a Buzzfeed article. Like, what do you expect? You can sort of tell that I'm light on content for the channel doing another one of these articles so soon. But Zutara is not a topic I've talked about all that much, so I want to talk about it here. So, Avatar is one of the best series on the planet, but the show did us dirty by pairing our Queen Katara with Aang. So immediately sort of Aang coming across quite badly in the phrasing of one of these things of like, it's Queen Katara, but it's just Aang. Like, how could they have paired such an amazing character like Katara with Aang when Zuko is here? So very clearly you see the bias from the author here. Clearly Katara and Zuko are, I guess, some of her favorite characters, and Aang not particularly. So that's one of the things you often see here with Zutara shippers, is a dismissal of the characters that are like the other sides of the canon ship. So Mai and Aang coming out pretty badly a lot of the time from Zutara discussions, unfairly. I think Mai is a great character and is actually very good for Zuko, but there's no points. I don't think Mai is even mentioned in this article. And then like Aang is a great character, and to say otherwise is just, I think, silly in my mind. So number one, Zuko respects Katara as a bender even if she's a girl. Like, what is this point? Like, pretty much everyone in the series respects Katara as a bender once they see her bend. Like this is not anything specific to Zuko at all. And even then, like, there's no like specific scenes really in the show. Like they show this clip, the screenshot here, you found a master, just him noticing that she's improved. Like, it how could he not? And it doesn't speak anything towards romance, because all characters who fight Katara notice like how skilled she is. It's just that Zuko happened to have fought her both sort of before and after, and has seen that growth. I don't think just a character merely noticing that Katara has improved is a romantic thing in any way. And the whole like, even if she's a girl thing of just like, is that meant to be an insult towards Katara? That like Zuko typically doesn't, but he does for Katara? Like, I don't get that point like really at all. Number two, Katara offers to help Zuko even though they're enemies, showing a screenshot from the chase. There's no real reason to help Zuko or Iroh, other than the fact that like someone is injured and our main characters don't want people to die? Like, that is such an obvious point of Katara helps people. And while she sort of has a bit of an issue with the Fire Nation, Iroh especially, I think, has proven himself that, like, there's a level of, like, he is not the real enemy here. And especially when they've just fought Azula. Zuko and Iroh were helping to fight Azula. Sort of enemy of my enemy is my friend. of course Katara's going to offer her help when she can heal. So look, I don't see this scene in any way as being, I am going to help your uncle for you, Zuko, because I secretly have a connection with you that I'm drawn to. No, someone is injured, she's a healer, she wants to heal. That's it. So trying to say anything more than that, I think, is just kind of preposterous. Number 3, they have more in common than they realize. This is just sort of like, yes, and wow, like characters at times have stuff that is similar. Wow, that totally means they should be together. You know, in the Crystal Catacombs, Zuko and Katara realize they have something in common. They both lost their mothers to the Fire Nation. That's a strong emotional tie that they bond over. Do you know what other character has also lost his mother to the Fire Nation? Aang. And I know it's not a point that a lot of people realize, because of course I think a lot of Zutara shippers just end up being so focused on these minor connections that they completely lose sight of like everything else. Aang did also lose his mother to the Fire Nation too. He also lost all of his people because the air nomads were wiped out. Aang is the last airbender. That is something that he has to deal with. So they do have that understanding of like Aang can understand that loss, that grief. We saw that directly in the Guru. That was one of the things he had to tackle to open one of the chakras, was deal with his grief. And that's, again, a significant point for sort of Aang and Katara, of just like, you know, their love for you isn't gone. It will be reborn in the form of new love, Aang Katara. So it's like, sure, that is a nice connection between that Katara and Zuko have, but Aang the same. And then, obviously, if you know the material, Zuko's mother isn't dead. Ursa's alive, and she's back in the series if you read the comics. So, especially now, it is a very different dynamic. So, you know, I guess back in this episode, Zuko didn't know what the situation was, so there was just like the Fire Nation took them away. But you know, it's a fine point, but it's not really romance specifically, because again, this scene that's covered in point 3 and 4 is the first time that Katara in any way views Zuko as not being an enemy. So how do you equate that suddenly to romance? They bring out the best in each other. Zuko opens up for her and becomes vulnerable, which he doesn't do for many other characters. One of those characters, of course, is May, who surprisingly isn't mentioned in this, because if they mentioned May, they would have to talk about scenes of Zuko being happy in his relationship with May, and, you know, that being positives for a relationship that is not Zutara. In response, she offers to use a special water from the Spirit Oasis to heal his scar, even though he's chased Team Avatar around the world. She's willing to do this for Zuko because she sees the good in him. Yes, and then she doesn't, and is proven to have made the right choice, because Zuko then betrays the group, and basically his betrayal leads to the tides turning in the final battle, and Aang getting killed, and Katara being forced to use the Spirit Oasis water to revive Aang from death, which is the reason Katara doubles down on hating Zuko right up until the Southern Raiders. Now, you can make the point of like, oh, what would have happened if she did use the Spirit Oasis water on the scar, but that didn't happen. So this is just a sort of, you know, what if sort of scenario. She was willing to use it here when there was no obvious other thing to use it for, but it didn't happen. So, like, you can only be so speculative about this, other than that, again, Katara wants to help people. And this was her sort of opening the door to seeing him in a different way, and he ruined it, of course. Katara and Aang's first real kiss is not the stuff of teenage dreams. And again, like, I thought this article was meant to just be, you know, why Zuko and Katara belong together. So why aren't all the points just, like, this and this is why Zutara is good, yet you have to have some anti-Katang stuff in here, because Zutara fans apparently just can't help themselves. It feels more like a brother-sister one. Like is there a more kind of overused dynamic when Zutara fans talk about Katang than this one? Even though there's a bunch of clear romance scenes between the two, and even though they note that the age difference is the same, you know, they big up like, oh, Zuko's more mature than Aang, even though Aang can have his moments of wisdom, and it's just like the difference that like, oh, because Aang is fun-loving, it's apparently a problem, and like Zuko's more mature because he sort of is more brooding as a character, I guess. That I sort of disagree with the idea, of course, that Aang is important to Katara as well because he brings fun back into her life. He brings that hope back into her life, and those are two things that she needs because typically she does play a more serious role within groups, and so Aang bringing out the fun again is actually a good part of their dynamic. And as for this scene as well, like, you have to keep in mind that this is Aang thinking he is going into a battle where he could die. This is sort of theoretically these almost like kiss goodbye type scene, and he does sort of sneak it up on her in a way. So it's just he kisses her, leaves, and she's left blushing. She doesn't get a chance to kind of like respond basically, but the fact that she blushes and doesn't say anything negative towards it, to me, is more pro Katang than anti Katang. So I think this point just is like a little bit of a like, okay, you've interpreted that one very negatively and wrongly, but okay. 6, Zuko saves Katara from a horrible death. Yes, when rocks come crashing down and nearly crush her, Zuko pulls her out of the way and uses his body as a shield, because being part of the group, he shouldn't do that unless he wants to show he's interested in a relationship with her. Like, this is just these sort of situations of like, anything positive that happens between Zuko and Katara is being interpreted as relationship stuff. This is why the two characters should be together, because Katara's never saved any character and Aang has apparently never saved any other character without it immediately meaning romance. That's the thing here, and then they're going to sort of talk, I suppose, a bit about the idea of like, you know, Katara's the only one who doesn't believe him, but he still will save her and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, because he has to prove himself to her, because she's the only one in the group who is having a really tough time with him being there, and she does the same for him. Again, like, she's not just going to let him die just because, again, her threat to Zuko was more of like, if you do anything, if you change and potentially are going to put Aang at risk again, that's when I'll step in and take you out. In this case, he's proven himself by fighting off Azula, so of course she's going to grab him when he's falling. Like, I don't see how this equates to, you know, they're suddenly in a relationship now, like power couple. It's just needlessly excessive, and to me it makes sort of some Zutara fans just seem crazy that like you can actually interpret this point here, 7, and view this scene as being, oh yeah, power couple because of that scene. It's just absolutely crazy to me. 8, Zuko wants to make amends with her because it means romance, that he wants to not have them be enemies, that he like, it has to mean romance, that Zuko doesn't want Katara to be upset at him. Like, you know, Katara still doesn't trust Zuko even though everyone else does. It clearly bothers him that he hasn't earned her support, and he cares about her opinion of him. He just wants to do right by her. Yes, of course, but how does this suddenly equate to romance? Like, he tries just as hard with the other members of the group earlier, going on the journey to the Sun Warriors with Aang, boiling rock with Sokka, and this is the time he does that with Katara. So is it just as much value that like, oh, Sokka and Zuko in a relationship, Aang and Zuko in a relationship as Katara? Like, that's the point here of just like, they're taking anything that is in any way sort of positive or can be viewed as any way positive between Katara and Zuko, and are taking that to be relationship stuff, even though there's no scenes directly highlighting that. So again, it's completely this idea of they are using entirely sort of speculative points to try and prove why this should have been the canon ship, while also doing their best to sort of, you know, defame basically Katara and Aang's relationship, even though there are clear romance scenes. He looks past Katara's hatred of him to truly understand her anger. He cares so much that he wants to know their mother's history, because that's the way to try and, you know, have him see her in a different way. Again, I don't know how this is being interpreted as like jumping about 12 steps into the future to being more like full-on Zutara shipping, and not just, you know, wow, a member of the group is angry at me. I want to do everything I can to not have every member of the group be angry at me. It's just excessive at this point. 10. Zuko understands Katara's need to hunt down the man who killed her mother when even Aang doesn't. For all her life, Katara has carried the hate in her heart for the Fire Nation commander who stole her mother. Now that she finally has a lead, she needs to pursue it. At first, Aang and Sokka don't understand, but Zuko does. I would argue that this episode, and I suppose this scene, is more Katang positive than it is Zutara positive. And I would actually argue that it's probably a good example of why Zuko and Katara don't work as a couple. The reason for that is because even at the end of this episode, Zuko acknowledges and says to Aang, you were right about what Katara needed. Zuko, having gone with Katara on this journey, comes back to Aang and realizes that what you said at the start, you were correct. You were correct to give Katara that information. And he basically admits that, like, I was wrong to have potentially almost, like, you know, goaded her almost, or not goaded is the wrong word, to sort of almost like accelerated her towards, you know, making her kill Yon Ra. I'm not trying to say like he's overly, I suppose, facilitating it. Like, he's going along with her, he's making everything happen. He gets her to Yon Ra, and he's not making any point either way about what are you going to do when you get there. And I think that's the difference. Of Zuko is just like, I'm going to do this because this is my way to sort of prove myself to her. He's not actually thinking about what is she going to do when she gets there in terms of advice on what decision should she make when she's there. And that to me is a huge thing that like is a red flag for Zuko and Katara. And I don't know why they almost bring this up. And this is an example of like very simplistic Zutara logic of, well, Katara argues with Aang about this because he doesn't fully support her decision, and Zuko is actually on Katara's side here, so that means they're going to be together forever. When it's like, yeah, because angry Katara wanting to kill the person who killed her mother is supporting the person who is okay with it, and arguing with the person who is more thinking about, and how will you feel when you take that revenge? Will you be the same person if you do it? Aang thinking ahead, giving her the wise wisdom. Now, ultimately at the end of the episode, she takes most of Aang's wisdom to heart. She doesn't kill Yon Ra and realizes that like he's not worth it. It's not worth it for Katara to change herself so much to kill him. She doesn't forgive him like sort of Aang suggests, but she uses that advice to then forgive Zuko. And again, like I said, Zuko even acknowledges Aang was correct. So I don't know why you'd bring up this point when it directly is counter to what they're trying to say. Completely. Like 100%. Like there's no interpreting that another way. It's just they brought it up and completely misinterpreted the dynamics going on there because it seemed like Zutara was more positive in that scene than Katang, when it more highlighted like a willingness for like Aang to argue with Katara and actually make a valid point, but also that he didn't go with them. Aang was perfectly fine with letting Katara go and trusting that she would make the right decision in the end, which she does. 11. Zuko volunteers to accompany Katara on her quest for justice. I suppose this is the same point ultimately. Aang and Sokka refuse to do. Aang, like I said, he trusts after giving her the advice that she'll make the right choice, that she won't kill Yon Ra. And then Sokka doesn't have the same hatred. He doesn't feel the need to go ahead with this. He cares about his mother too, but is not going to pursue vengeance in that way. That's just not how he feels about it. And it's okay for Sokka and Katara to have differing views on that. We even saw that, you know, Katara, I think, like, went over the top and saying then you didn't love her as much as I did. But that's what makes the Southern Rages such an amazing episode, because there is such great character nuance. So simplifying it down to like, Zuko was so amazing because he went with Katara to help her on her quest for vengeance, and two characters who cared about her didn't. Because you didn't need to have this episode be three characters in the background behind Katara arguing about kill him, don't kill him. No, it has to be her there on her own. And that's why they basically have it be that Zuko is just there to help her along the way. He really doesn't give her any information either way on, you know, what should she do when he gets there. He doesn't think about that until the end and realizes Aang was correct. 12. Going on such an emotional journey with Zuko leads Katara to open up her heart. So yeah, she forgives him at the end. Of course. This is the well-earned moment for Katara and Zuko, when Katara, who rightfully feels betrayed after the end of Book 2, finally accepts him as being part of the group and forgives him, and now will properly see him as a friend within the group. It's a friendship moment. That's it. Like, it's a good moment. I like that moment, because as much as I maybe am coming across as anti-Zutara here, I'm mainly just anti some of Zutara's ways about going about discussing things. I don't really care. Like, if this article was just 23 points about just like Zuko and Katara that were just kind of these symbolic things that speculative wise people think would be okay, fair enough. I'm not even going to make a video on that, because I don't feel the need to have to push down all these other ships. But again, it's the fact that there are scenes in here that are like, look at this Katara and Aang scene, look how bad it is, as well. And I think it also gets in the way of the actually good arc that is, slow but steady, Katara and Zuko becoming friends. In the same way that, you know what's also slow and steady? Katara and Aang becoming a couple over the course of the series. It's fine to have both. Katara literally throws herself into Zuko's arms, and he's also happy to wrap them around her. And I'm sorry, but they make a gorgeous couple. It's just like, okay, fair enough. Like, if that is your entire point for why you ship Zutara, that is perfectly fine. That you view Katara and Zuko as being two of the most attractive characters in the series, and so them together are a gorgeous couple. That's fine. But it's not a great point if you're trying to argue why this is the case over the relationship that actually has romantic development. And, you know, the caps lock, unreal, throws herself, gorgeous. It's way over the top. And given that it is a hug of them signifying properly them becoming friends, interpreting it as like this is also the main romantic moment between the two is just so over the top and borderline embarrassing, I think. 14. Zuko drops little hints that he's interested in Katara. How does this scene in any way hint towards Zuko liking Katara? They do not show in this scene Zuko making a choice to specifically sit down next to Katara for a reason. He is like basically saying, Aang, just sit down next to me, because he can't see what Aang is trying to do in terms of romantically sitting next to Katara. This is more of a Katang scene than anything resembling a Zutara scene, so I don't get this one. Like, this is such a stretch as a Zutara scene. 15. They engage in some pretty obvious flirting. How? Like, this whole episode, Ember Island Players, is about comments like this. A character reacts to seeing themselves on screen. Another character makes a snappy comment about it, like making fun of the other character being presented in a weird way. This is just one of those moments between Zuko and Katara. So trying to be like, so look how flirtatious it is. Like, not really. When the play covers their blossoming feelings for each other, they act like it's true. No, they don't. Look at it. Like, I get it's sort of open to interpretation the exact way to do this, but like the fact that the argument for why it suggests how they feel about each other is just like, that's exactly what teenagers would do if their crushes were revealed on stage, when they look at each other and then both decide to move a little bit away from each other because they both sort of agree that, like, yeah, no. Like, have they not just directly cited an anti-Zutara scene that is canon? Like, highlighting that there are more scenes of the two characters directly being like, what? Our relationship? No. When Aang kisses Katara after the play, she just says she's confused. So what's their actual point here? Aang confronts Katara about her... There we go. Non-existent feelings, really. This is just so, like, over the top at this point. Like, honestly, trying to, like, the person writing this saying that It's just like, you haven't watched the show. You are so blinded by liking one ship over another that you are actively denying specific things that directly happen in the show just because you prefer one ship over the other. That it's stuff like this that I'm sure for certain Zutara fans who are better about sort of handling these type of discussions, they must be embarrassed by Zutara fans who say stuff like that. In the same way that like Katang fans, like it's also embarrassing when I think Katang fans go overboard with just always needing to bash on Zutara. This is like a very easy target, like this article, because of how sort of poorly put together it is in a way. So like I don't mind sort of talking about this and being a little bit more negative towards Zutara, because I am aware that most Zutara shippers are not like this. This is sort of the annoying section of the Zutara fanbase who make points like this that are just so over the top, that it's insane to think that anyone thought that anyone could say this. So busy thinking about her crush on him. Plus, Aang kissing her when she clearly doesn't want it is so problematic. Again, this is one of those things where like they're trying to frame Aang as being the villain, when at this stage in the story, Katara and Aang have kissed a few times. Katara has initiated one of them, Aang initiated another one, and here's Aang initiating another one. Yes, this is the first time she actually says like, no, I didn't want that, but in this case it's there for plot reasons. Of she says she's confused despite the fact that really she does know how she feels at this point, because it would be a very bad thing for her to start a relationship with Aang at this point in the story going into the finale. That's the last thing that the world really needs, is for Aang to be focused on a new relationship he's just started with Katara going into that final battle. So she, in my mind, sort of makes this choice to specifically not pursue the relationship so that Aang is in a better state of mind going into the final battle. In that, like, really there's three ways that this scene can play out. Aang kisses Katara, and her response, there are three real ways to do it. One is that she kisses back and this starts their relationship at this point in time. I think that would have worked not so well going into the final battle, because of the arc of the characters. I think you had to wait until afterwards. Two, she could have explained that like she was confused, and go further and be like we can't be in a relationship now, but maybe afterwards. But that still would be like, we're going to be in a relationship, so Aang would be thinking about that going in. So Katara makes the choice to just say she's confused, to leave it up in the air, so that Aang is more thinking about like, what does that mean, rather than directly a new relationship. That's always been my take on this scene, of like, it's just Katara understanding sort of Aang's issues with attachment, and that the world needs him at his best going into the final battle, and it's best that they start this later on. 18. They continue to act like they're denying their feelings for one another. And look, this is fairly obvious, of just like, June likes playing with people, she says this, and they both completely disagree with it. And like, are we really going to go down the thing of just like, oh, if you deny it so much, that means you actually do care? Of just like, no, in this case it's factual that they both are not, you know, Katara is not Zuko's girlfriend. That's true. That is correct in this scene. And then June doesn't pursue it after this as well. So like, it's a pretty standard one, and I think trying to read too much into it is a bit over the top. 19. Katara gives Zuko the encouragement he needs to face Uncle Iroh. Katara offers her wisdom and convinces Zuko that all will be well. It might not have happened without her help. And look, this is fine. Like, in a way, it's very fitting that Katara is the one to sort of say the last thing to Zuko before he goes in to speak to Iroh, because those are the three characters kind of involved in the betrayal of Zuko back at the end of book 2. He betrayed Katara's trust, and then betrayed Iroh's trust at the same time. If he's fixed things with Katara, then of course he can fix things with his uncle, and so Katara saying that to him has a lot of meaning. I don't think it's romantic in any way. It's just the advice that I think a lot of characters would have given Zuko at this point, knowing Iroh, knowing Zuko's relationship with Iroh, and so on. But anyway, 20. Zuko accepts Azula's challenge to an Agni Kai because he's trying to protect Katara. Okay, yes, this is true. He also is Sozin's Comet enhanced, Katara isn't, so you understand that completely. That he feels he can take Azula in her sort of mentally diminished state, so he goes ahead with it this way. Fair enough. He's been wanting to have an Agni Kai with Azula, and here he is finally given that opportunity and feels he's confident enough to take it. No problem there. I don't see how it's particularly romantic in that, like, wow, someone who is her friend doesn't want her to get hurt. Shock, you know? Do you know who else also doesn't want Katara to get hurt? Nearly everyone who's met her. Like Sokka, Aang, Toph, they don't want to see her get hurt either. And so it's just like, what sort of a point is that? It's so simplistic of like, they're friends. Of course they don't want each other to get hurt. Which is the same in like all of these points of like, yes, Zuko, who can defend against this attack, is going to try and block the blast aimed at Katara, because it's very symbolic at this point in time of Azula in the middle of an Agni Kai, sort of an honor fight, does something dishonorable by trying to strike someone outside of the arena. Zuko stops that and in turn sort of loses his opportunity to beat Azula. That's very kind of symbolic, but it shows the character that he is, of like, he cares about the people around him. Yes, he cares about Katara, but viewing it as being sort of romantic, I think, is the problem, outside of just he shows the type of character that he is in general. Of just like, any character who saw Zuko do this in front of them is going to be shocked, regardless of who it is. In that, like, if it was meant to be romantic, they would have done a whole lot more than they actually do in the episodes, than just show a shocked reaction from Katara. So, you know, if that's not love, I don't know what is. It's just like, maybe scenes actually highlighting that the two are attracted to each other, like scenes that actually happen in the show that clearly show a relationship. That's what we're looking for. 22. Even after being zapped, Zuko reaches out to Katara. It's just like, okay, I get it. Like, he's injured, he's trying to crawl over, but he's out of action at this point in time. I get it. Fair enough. Finally, water and fire are opposite elements. Their differences would make their relationship stronger. Considering the balance of yin and yang, it is an important plot point of the show. Is it? Like, look, there's like a few scenes in the show where they highlight, you know, yin and yang, kind of like balance, light and dark and stuff like that. But it really is only that one time with like Ko, and then it transitioning into like Tui and Law and stuff like that. I get it, you know, opposites attract and stuff like that. It's a huge trope and stuff like that. But this is the biggest signifier of just the worst kind of points that you can, I think, truly make to try and big up why a relationship kind of works and why it doesn't. In terms of like, it's literally just, is this symbolic? Like, a waterbender and a firebender, it just works, like, amazing. When you can apply the exact same thing to Mei and Zuko, like, their personalities are kind of opposite, and because of that, they balance each other out. And then they're just trying to make, you know, Katara would make an amazing Fire Lady. We all know Fire Lord Zuko would be a better ruler with Katara as a Lord S. And it's like, okay, if you think so. But like, seriously, the point of just like literally elements, therefore good. Like completely ignoring personality, literally just elements is why that they should be in a relationship, because like their bending directly equates to their personal differences. In that, like, okay, look, I get it in this case, like Katara does for the most part represent a typical waterbender, Zuko does for the most part represent a typical firebender, but you know, it's not a direct comparison of their personalities here. And like, that's the thing, like, it's not the worst Zutara stuff I've ever seen. You may be shocked to hear that, in a way, after going through so many of these points. But I think the problem with this the whole time is literally just that so many of them are literally just points like this. Of like, wow, Zuko noticed something about Zutara. Wow. Like, Zutara likes to help people, including sometimes people that she doesn't like. And it's like things in common. You know, they had a moment that hinted at something. You know, he saved her. Like, okay. It's just these kind of moments where it's like, yes, that is a positive thing that happened between Zutara and Zuko. Positive things happened between Zuko and a lot of other characters, and happened between Zutara and a lot of other characters. Why is it such a big point? Why is it one of the big 23 points behind why Zutara should have got together as a couple? When in the end, what it comes down to pretty much is that a lot of Zutara fans don't like that Zuko was put into a relationship with Mai, who they don't view as being sort of worthy of the character, and they're utterly dismissive of her as a character, and they for some reason don't like Aang as well and feel that Zutara should be in a better relationship, even though Zutara and Aang's relationship is very, very good. I don't get it, and that's why I don't particularly get involved in shipping conversations all that much, because most of the time it is not worth it to try and attempt to argue with a Zutara fan like this, because all you're going to get all day is points like this thrown at you. And you're going to get like people arguing like, oh, look at this scene and this scene, and then complete misunderstanding, misinterpretation of scenes like this, where they think they're saying one thing but they're actually making a point completely against what they're talking about, and so on. So, you know, it's one of those things. Again, there's a difference between talking about canon ships and scenes between canon ships that are directly there in the show, a clear romantic scene, and purely speculative thing where you are trying to turn any slightly positive character interaction between two characters into reasoning behind why this relationship should have happened, in terms of changing the canon of the show. Two completely different things, and you need to be aware of when you're talking about one and when you're talking about the other. In the sense of, like I said, I ship the Doph. I'm not going to make the argument for why, despite it seeming like it's not the case, the Duke should have been in the relationship with Toph because of X reason and Y reason versus whatever actually happened. I will only ever make the point of, like, some of the scenes that happened between the Duke and Toph when they were in the scenes together showed a little bit more than, say, Toph and just some other random character. That's the only point I would make, and I'd sort of leave it at that. Up to you if you want to sort of join the crew of the good ship, the Doph, or anything like that, because we're not here to try and change canon or argue this way or the other. Just point out that there was a little something there. Maybe you'll notice it too. But that's been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this one, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.